What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is Chewburger84 here from the Alternate Reality Network, and we are back again with some Marvel Strike Force content. Now today, we are talking about the Asgardians, because that's right, ladies and gents, when Odin is away, the kids come out to play, and these kids are here to play indeed. The rework for Thor and Loki has been wonderful. Hela is a revelation. I think that she has a massive role in the future of this game's endgame content. So what we wanted to do, like we always do, is to break down the essential T4 upgrades that we think you will want on this team as a bare minimum to get them going. Now, what we're going to do slightly different in this video is I'm going to tell you which abilities I would do if I had high red stars on the character as well. Because there are some abilities that you look at and say, that's relatively low value for me, but can completely change once you start having a character at very high power levels. So let's not waste your time. Let's start reviewing the characters for their T4 upgrades. Now, we can't start a review of the Asgardians without starting with the God of Thunder himself, Thor, Odin's son. Now, I'm very jealous of the guns that he is sporting in this particular picture. Obviously, I look much closer to Bro Thor in Avengers Endgame right now.
Is he asleep?
No. I'm pretty sure he's dead.
So if we have a look at his kit, starting off with his basic, it's a flat damage ability. While it would be a nice to have, this is something we would only recommend if you have Thor at 6 to 7 red stars, which is of course a very low chance of having, but it's not really going to add much in the way of utility to your squads. If we have a look at his special ability, the fact that it is on low cooldown, only every 3 turns of energy, does make it very enticing to have a look at this, but again, it is only guaranteeing the 3rd attack, as well as increasing the primary and secondary target damage. I would say if you have a Thor that is 5 red stars or above, this one may be worth considering, but at the end of the day, it is a flat damage increase, and isn't necessarily going to bring you that large utility boost, which many T4s you want them to have. When we look at his ultimate, however, this is a very different story. We want this ability to have every possible chance in the world to stun, because remember, this is going to be able to cast on every single enemy on the opposing team. For raids and Fear the Darkness, this is an ability we want to go off as often as possible. While the extra 50% damage is nice, the real reason we want to T4 this ability is because of this extra 10% chance to stun. It still leaves you with a 50-50, but remember there are always 2 dice rolls to this stun. First of all is the 50% chance from these 2 abilities combined when maximized, and then of course there's the resistance check, where your focus will be compared to the enemy resistance before the stun will actually be put on the enemy. This is one you definitely want to go into, and it is definitely a central part of Thor's kit. Now, Thor's new passive is wonderful. The increased speed, the heals, the charges, the ability energy, it's all very, very good. Now, the extra damage that you get from T4ing his passive, it's not incredible. It's okay, but it's not incredible. It may be worthwhile considering this extra 5% flat damage if you have a 5 to 6 red star or above, but below that, again, it's only a flat damage increase. And because of how infrequently the 20% extra damage will come into play, that part's not worth it, but the 5% scaling damage might be. We wouldn't recommend it as an essential upgrade, but it's definitely one worth considering. And Thor, with his kit combined and his epic Lightning Storm stun, is definitely going to be someone to contend to not only on war defense, but we believe possibly in raids as well. Coming up next is Thor's brother from exactly the same mother, and that is the trickster himself, Loki. Now, Loki has always had a fun kit, but he's had one tweak which makes him a very essential part of this team, especially when with the Asgardians on defense. So let's have a look to see if he has any decent T4s waiting. His basic is only really adding in an extra chance to evade, which is nice for him, but it's not essential, nowhere near essential, and not enough of an addition to justify such a small increase in damage anyway. So this is not one that we would recommend. His mind control, however, is definitely something that is nice to have on bringing in that second enemy to hit. So 75% chance is quite high, Shoring this up to make sure it goes off every single time is wonderful, but this team will function very well without that upgrade. Don't get me wrong, if I had unlimited T4s, this would be one that I would do very quickly, but right now, while resources are scarce, I would pass on this one until I'd done the essentials, and then loop back to this one as a nice upgrade to have. Moving into his ultimate, however, this is one that defensively is always going to benefit this team. So he's going to summon his minions like he normally does. They'll do a little bit more damage, but that's not really while we're here. The main thing is that it's going to increase the stealth to all of your allies for 2 turns. That means that the enemy has to waste significantly more attacks against your mirror images with evades, giving you a little bit longer survivability for the rest of your team. Now if we come down here to the God of Mischief passive, 10% enemy resistance is just nowhere near enough to justify. So I wouldn't be running out right now to spend this one, not even as a nice to have, which means really the only essential ability on Loki is the mirror image, with mind control being a nice option to have. From the God of Mischief to the Goddess of Death, Hela is next up, and my personal favorite of the new Asgardian lineup. She plugs into a hell of a lot of teams, and I really think she's a great character. Now ignore what you see on the left, I definitely wouldn't upgrade all of her T4 abilities. I've only done it because I've pulled high red stars, and I do plan on using her in a lot of endgame modes. Let's start off with her basic, Black Blade. And as you can see, it is a very reasonable increase for damage on a basic ability, especially considering the fact that it is going to hit a second time for piercing damage. This is a nice to have, but really would be one of the last abilities you come back to. Again, I would only do it if you've pulled very high red stars on this character. Now, Command Undead is a very different story because you have the ability to not only do damage, but that's not really why we're here. We want to apply 2 separate turns of Disrupted. Given the fact that this ability has such a low cooldown, the reality is you can still have stacks of Disrupted up still by the time you loop back around to this ability if you take this upgrade. This will allow you a much better chance of using her ultimate ability to spread this Disrupted across an entire enemy team. Against teams like Shield or those that rely very heavily on their buffs offensively and defensively, this can really stop a team in its tracks, and this is definitely a T4 that you want to have. Coming up next, and this is definitely the thing that makes her an amazing character, and that is her ultimate ability. So first of all, she's going to flip that death proof, which is very, very good because we want to be able to kill them. Then attack them for damage, and the 50% increase in damage here is nice. But the reality is we want to maximize the amount that we can clear across the enemy team by spreading as much hell as possible. Now I will admit that in an Asgardian team, there is not really that many buffs that are going to benefit you. There's not going to be many things that you're spreading on the other team. It's mainly about that defense down from Loki. However, as someone who is using her in conjunction with Scientist Supreme in Ultima 7, I can tell you that being able to reliably spread 4 debuffs across the entire enemy raid team is nothing short of incredible. This is definitely an ability I recommend for Hela, although you may find limited usage of this if you are only using her in an Asgardian team. I believe it's essential for her for the whole of the game, but if you are only going to use her for war defense, this may be one that you yourself skip. And then we come down to the Goddess of Death. Now this is going to provide 5% max health for her, and of course 5% max health for every non-summon Asgardian ally, and it is going to give an increase in damage on war defense to the whole Asgardian squad. So this is definitely something that if you have a high starred team, high red star team, that you want to have. Now in saying that, if you do have high stars on this character, remember that all the things that you have here carry across from her passive. So that means that this extra 40% of this character's health when Greg dies is going to be passed back to whoever is the lowest health Asgardian. So upgrading it means you do get a little bit more health throwing out on your team. So this is a very nice ability to have as well, and does make Hela a hell of a good character, and one that I hope you have the same luck that I have on her red stars. Now, when you have 3 unruly Asgardians running around as a family like the 3 just mentioned, you definitely need an all-seeing eye to make sure they're not getting up to too much mischief, and that is where Heimdall comes in. Now, he's one of the newest characters. We don't have him at High Farm just yet, but he is someone that is probably one of the weaker parts of this team, but does plug some nice gaps for this squad. So his basic is very simple, it's only adding some damage. I really wouldn't invest in this unless I had maximal red stars. If we have a look at his special, however, this is one that you really want to have. So it is on a reasonably short cooldown, but it's going to guarantee that you clear the heal block from himself and all Asgardian allies. The reason that this is so important is one of the key things to the survivability of this team is each of them has a passive ability, or via Hela's passive when her undead Asgardian dies, they constantly have health coming back. Now you need to rely on that health, and if you are heal blocked by a cheeky little Mordo, you are not going to be able to take full advantage of that. It's something that is a hard counter to this team. So having him to be able to clear that heal block reliably is something that is definitely worthwhile, and 50% extra damage on an AoE like this is also not bad either. Now if we have a look at his ultimate, this is only a little bit of increased damage, no extra utility added, so this is probably one that I would skip, again unless I had him maxed at red stars. His passive, however, if you are going to be using this squad on war defense, this one becomes pretty much essential because it's going to take the defense up for 2 turns from only 3 Asgardians to all of the current Asgardians. And that's going to give you a much better opening turn or 2 in your war defense. The extra 10% focus is nice, but it's not the main reason that we are using this particular upgrade. I would say this is a nice to have, but if you are not war focused and you are not using this team on war defense, it is one that I would also skip. So Heimdall's all-seeing eye is definitely watchful, but he doesn't have a lot of abilities outside of his special that we would really go hard on. Who better to make sure that the God of Thunder is protected than the Lady Sif? Now she is the protector for this team, and we are still waiting to see just how effective she is going to be when she is released via Blitz in a few weeks. Now, as a protector, she doesn't have a lot that we recommend upgrading right now. If we have a look at her basic ability when she launches, it's only adding a small amount of damage, and as a tank, we're expecting this to have relatively low damage anyway. Even if I had high red stars on Lady Sif, it'd be very unlikely you would see me maximize this ability. Now her Shield Slam special, however, is the same boat, it's only adding damage, and as a protector, this is really not going to get you much of an advantage. Going across to her ultimate, this does do extra damage to AoE, which is normally something we would consider for a DPS character, but is not really worthwhile if we are having it on a protection character. Now this last one is one that we really have to wait and see how good a tank she is. If she is someone that turns out to having high armor and high health on top of her ability to deflect and also counter, this is something that we believe is a very nice to have, or could even become an essential T4 upgrade for Lady Sif. Because an extra 10% chance to block an ability, especially in modes like Ultima 7 and Fear the Darkness, where you are eating very, very significant amounts of damage, this could be something that you end up needing a lot. Right now though, we need to wait until she launches, but we believe that if Lady Sif turns out to be a powerful tank, considering her taunt is on such a low cooldown, this could be an ability that becomes essential instead of currently just a nice to have. Now the reworked Asgardians plus the addition of Hela, Heimdall and Sif, this team is looking very, very good with utility that could actually cross over into multiple game modes. Now of course, with Heimdall giving the defense up on spawn in war defense, to say that this is a team that may end up becoming quite challenging to kill within war defense is to understate it significantly. Because remember, each of these characters has a passive that is going to heal them, and Lady Hela as well has got her Asgardian undead minion who is going to die and consistently heal this team through her passive. Now, if it wasn't hard enough to kill these characters, of course we have Loki with his new passive. Every time one of these Asgardians drops below 50% health, that character is going to gain stealth to be hidden away. That leads them to take another turn and probably get their heal up, which is a fantastic thing for the survivability of this squad. Now, Loki also brings further survivability to this team with his AoE stealth and minions, which means that you can hide this squad away for a longer period of time. Now, the addition that Hela has brought in as of the last patch by having 10% reduction on turn meter every time one of her Asgardian minions dies means that if multiple Asgardians have died before Hela, you can end up having AoE splash damage from the opposition, ending up rewinding their turn meter very heavily, meaning that you might force the enemy to have to use single target abilities over and over again. Now, the great thing really is that while all this is going on, while the enemy is trying to hit your Asgardians, Thor is in the background building up charges. And if he gets enough of those charges, he is going to spray out a heck of a lot of passive damage. That is going to accelerate how quickly he gets his ultimate, and that gives you a chance of landing a great stun. Now, it is that particular synergy that I believe means that 2 to 3 of these may end up being an Ultima 7 team on their own. At this stage, I'm not 100% convinced that Heimdall and Sif will be a part of that, although I think these 5 together on war defense will definitely be the case. Now, Loki and Hela, I believe, have the most powerful synergy in this whole team, which is Loki's ability to get defense down on a primary target, of which Hela can immediately then spread that defense down to every opposing enemy on the board. Now, not only does it do this, but I need to say this, and it's not just because I have a 5 red star now and soon to be 6 red star Hela. Her damage is not to be underestimated. She does a lot of AoE damage, and I'm currently using her in a modified Techwing team in Ultima 7 to wonderful effect. Her ability to disrupt and spread that defense down, whether she is in an Asgardians team or any other team, Hela is definitely one of the most versatile characters in this game right now. She's bringing heals, she's bringing turn meter reduction, she's bringing debuff spread, and of course disruption. She's a wonderful character. Now, you might have noticed that I haven't really talked much about Lady Sif, and that's because she's really not bringing a great deal to the rest of the team. She's just there to protect them. There is one synergy on this team that I actually think could weaken Lady Sif, and that actually comes from Loki himself. You see, when Lady Sif drops below 50% health, the last thing that you want a taunting character normally to do is to become stealthed, because then the enemy can hit anyone who is not currently stealthed. This is one mechanic that I think could limit the Asgardian team's potential, because it could mean that simply single target nuking Sif down could be enough so that you can get access to that Thor or that Hela backline, which will allow you to take this team down very easily. But I am hoping that her deflects and her base health and armor are effective enough to make that quite a deterrent. I think the Asgardian team is in very, very good shape. I cannot wait until we can farm all 5 of them, and regardless of them being the Black Bolt requirement or not, this is a team that I am definitely going to be playing with, and as you can already see by my investment in Hela, I'm also going to do the T4s that we have recommended here today. Now, if you'd like to see an infographic version of this, as you can see on the screen, Pika has already developed this for alternate reality. You can find it on our website via the links below, and you can get your copies of that over there. Now, what do you think? Did we get this right? Did we get this wrong? Is there something that you believe we've missed? Make sure you engage in the conversation below in the comment section. And while you're down there, subscribe, like, all the bells, all the fun things, and then head on over to Discord and the alternatereality.com website so that you can join the conversation for yourself. I've been Shoeburger84, and we look forward to talking with you again very soon. Cheers.